All right, we are going to give you the hard truth about two new releases from, Hard Truth. Let's see what we're going to do next. Welcome back to Parts and Pours. Jim here, and this is a golf-centric whiskey channel where we talk a little bit about golf and a lot of bit about whiskey. If you would, like, subscribe, hit that stuff that's running across the bottom. That way the subscribership goes up. We are actually doing pretty good, so let's keep the ball rolling forward. Alrighty, so, well, what are we doing today? I got to finish my chores this morning, so I lit up my garage area where I have my lawnmowers, and I went from almost no light to a whole bunch of light, as you're seeing now. That in its own right, in a nice humid area with no airflow, makes for a very sweaty operation. Also, I was able to obtain, purchase, whatever you want to call it, some barrel heads, and I got them while I was in Indiana, and so I'm in the process of gluing them and turning them into something. We'll see what they turn into. Could be part of a project here. You just never know. And then we cleaned up into the kitchen. That's just a normal Sunday chore for us before getting ready to cook on the grill. So now what are we talking about for real? Okay, so Cask and Still. Cask and Still is an event from Hard Truth. Yes, I am wearing a Hard Truth hat. No, they're not sponsoring me. The hat finally fits my big head. I found a hat that fits my big head, and I really enjoy it. It fits well. I like the colors, the whole 9 yards. And it is a trucker style hat, but I've got plenty of clips or plenty of holes filled up, which is what I like. Okay, so Cask and Still. Cask and Still is an event that Hard Truth puts on, and normally what it is, it's a early release event party. We'll call it that. You pay your entry fee, and what happens is they serve you food pairings with cocktails that are made out of the liquor that is being released that early. So one time it might be a rye, one time it might be a bourbon, it might be one of each. It could be either that, okay? This time around, because we're into the summertime and they're getting ready to have a barbecue bourbon contest in July, coming very, very quick, I will say, 20 to 30 teams are going to be participating for a $5,000 cash prize. So you can guarantee they're going to be bringing their A game with this. So if you're in the neighborhood and you want to go see it, look up the bourbon event that they're having, the barbecue and bourbon event that they're having. Got to purchase tickets, and you should be able to taste some food. The guy, Don White, his last name was White, from White Smoke. He is going to be one of the judges, and they're going to require them to actually make a dish with their with one of their products that they put out. So that in its own right is a whole nother test. Okay, that's another test for these barbecuers, and you'll be able to test some of the bourbons that are being released, all that stuff. It's going to be a really good time. All right, back to Cask and Still. This weekend we went to Cask and Still, and they had two new releases that are not due for at least a month. Okay, not due for at least a month. And the first one is going to be the Sweet Mash finished bourbon, and it is a straight bourbon whiskey finished with toasted Amburana oak. Okay, this one comes in at 110.9, and it was dumped on May of 15. It doesn't tell you the age, but what they did was they have the bourbon, and they didn't put it into an Amburana cask. They put Amburana staves into the cask in order to age it up. Now, I will say, prior to doing all this, that, Amburana tastes horrible, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you overdo anything, it tastes horrible. This, Cinnamon Toast Crunch kind of concept everybody comes to the field with. This is very, very lightly done, and they did a very, very good job with it. Okay, this one is a double oaked straight rye whiskey finished in new charred oak barrels. This one comes in at 108 proof, and this one, it was a 31 barrel batch, and this comes in 108.4. And the difference here was, because I was able to talk to the guy that put it together, was it did its years. It's at least 6 years that I know of. Then it gets put into a toasted cask, or toasted barrel, and then it ages until it comes to the flavor profile that they like. Now, I forgot to mention in this one, in the Amburana, that they used the Amburana and then it was actually finished in some sherry casks. So there's a little bit of a, they're trying to taper off that Amburana, give it a little bit extra sweetness for that. So we've got a lot going on here. They're really experimenting with finishes now. Now that they've got their solid lineup, they've got their rye, which they say is the #3 rye in the world. They have a sweet mash bourbon, and they have a sweet mash wheated. Now that's their standard shelfer stuff that you're going to see. They just, last 6 months, they've released a 7-year version of that same thing. And you would think, oh, it doesn't make a big difference. Well, kind of does, okay? And that particular product is very, very nice. They also have a slew of other products, which you probably see right about here. Yep, we now have 3 lines of them, of mostly finished products that just, whenever we tasted them, we thought, well, it's time to come home with us. They have one more that is coming out that have the caramel malt in it that gives it a chocolatey note. That will be a distillery only release, and that was the one that, the cousin to that one, was the one that won our Ryder Cup. Okay, all right, so let's get started here. I also brought this guy with me. This is the Sweet Mash Rye, and I'm going to tell you why. This one is from our Tours and Tasting, comes in at 121. We're almost done with it, and we're going to use an experiment. This is the one that they had out at the Cask and Still, but we're going to use this one in place of that one, so I don't have to open up another bottle. All right, so these corks that are on here, this is real cork, no kidding, into a, I believe it's fake cork, but not, initial pop was a great cork game. I've already poured these so I could breathe a little bit. Not too bad. Right now they're medium, but beforehand they're pretty solid. Okay, so we're going to start with, let's start with the double oak, and we'll go over into the Amburana. Again, Amburana, the oak is 108 proof, 108.4. You can tell it's a little darker in nature, but in the toasted barrels, what most people will say in toasted barrels, you get the marshmallow, heavy vanillas, that kind of stuff that the toasted oak barrels bring out in it. Okay, 108 proof and some change, and this is a double oaked rye. So what do we expect in the double oak rye? We expect a grain finish. We expect a little bit of a toasted finish, i.e. marshmallow, that kind of stuff. And right on the front of the nose is the rye, with a hint of the caramel, and following it with the marshmallow flavor. Oh, there you go. So there's nothing's hiding on this one. This one turned out very nice. Yep, rye, toasted marshmallow, rye, toasted marshmallow, and a little bit of caramel. Salute. And just exactly what do you expect out of a double oaked. And again, I am not a double oaked fan. I don't go chasing this kind of stuff for just fear that I'm going to be drinking an oak stave, and that's just not my thing. But in this one, the caramels are into the front, the oily textures in the middle, and then you get the vanilla / marshmallowy towards the end with a pretty decent finish, which you would expect from a rye. Okay, this is from one of the ryes. Very well done. Sometimes I pick up a cherry on this, and sometimes I don't. This one is just a rye forward experience with that marshmallowy vanilla flavoring. So, you know, the marshmallow flavoring, the vanilla, it kind of tapers the rye off, and then it comes back and it gets you at the end in the finish. Very well done. Okay, so as part of what I told you we're having this other bottle for, I came up with an experiment, and we are going to do that while we taste on to the next one. So let me clear my palate. All right, now onto the Amburana. Again, the Amburana is 110.9, so not too far off. This is the one that's traveled through a bunch of different barrels, in that it had, well, 2 barrels, but it had the Amburana staves put in it, not into I think when you put it into that Amburana barrel, that's when people let it set in there a little bit too long, and it gets a really, really heavy. So now here we go. We're at 110 and some change. This is a Amburana not finished, but it's Amburana in the barrel bourbon, and then they put Amburana staves in the barrel, and then they finished it with a sherry cask. So there's a whole lot going on with this. I don't expect a heavy one, but as you notice, the coloring, and I don't know if it was from the Amburana, is much lighter, right? So either the Amburana finishing or the sherry cask finishing, but whatever I've seen of sherry cask finishing makes it a little bit darker. So maybe Amburana has more of an influence on color and flavor than we think. So let's test this. Almost a dull nose. There we go. I don't get hit with all that cinnamon toast crunch or any of that. It's more of a bourbon nose. There you go. A little bit of the that sugary cereal, and a little bit of fruit. It's like a white fruit on the front and a sugary cereal at the end, but it's very, very light. These are very light layers that are going on. They're not heavy textures whatsoever. I'm wondering if that's what I'm picking up in the sherry finishing. That could be part of it, that fruity kind of note. So let's see about this one. Salute. Wow. This couldn't be any more than night and day. This was punchy with the caramel and the marshmallow, very punchy right to the front. This was very, we'll say, calm. This was very fruit forward. This was very, the layers are very, very close to one another. They're almost indecipherable between the two or three of them. This one does not beat your head in the very first sip like the punchy one would. And the Amburana, it doesn't really take over anything. In fact, I think maybe the sherry cask might be the player in this one. Wow, yeah. If you had to have this could be somebody you could introduce. This could be a bourbon you could introduce bourbon drinkers to, and have them go, oh, that's not so bad. And it has. You can just feel it on the very back while I'm talking to you, that Amburana finish, where they talk about that cinnamon toast crunch kind of flavor. It's just emanating from the entire palate, but it's not overtaking any of it. This is really quite well done. You get the influence from the sherry cask, and then you get the age from the bourbon itself. That was very, very well done. I can't wait for these to come out for real in about a month's time. Now, when I was there, they had this here as a single oaked barrel versus a double oaked barrel, and they wanted to give you an idea of what the differences was. Well, after 3 of the really nice food pairings and a handful of drinks, I said, what about if we did a mixture of the two? And he said, well, let's find out. So I've got about this much in it. I've got about this much in there. We're going to combine the two. There we go. And we're going to swirl this around. And we're going to see, because when I was there at the Cask and Still, this turned out to be quite the little adventure here. And something that, maybe you would want to do at your house. Okay, we got some good swirling going on. Holy cow. Yeah, I think we got a winner here. Run, don't walk, to get this and this together. Very first dose was cola and brown sugar. Wow. This is something else. You get just and this is a rye, fellas and ladies. What comes off of this is just amazing. The nose on this one is something that I like, all right? You get the RC cola or the regular cola note, and it's covered up by a sweetness of a brown sugar, and the rye only shows up at the very end. Just amazing. Holy moly, I just hope this tastes as good as the yesterday did. And it was yesterday that we were there. Oh my. Yep. So on this one, the palate doesn't quite follow the nose on this one, in that I get the red fruit on the front, I get that cola note in the middle, but it has a very punchy finish. A very punchy finish, to be sure. Very, very well done. This is, you know, if I was to give average marks to either one of these, but put them together, and it's an above average pour, to be sure. Nicely done. And the finish is right there. You're getting, and we still haven't figured out what the Indiana version of a Kentucky hug is. You know, they tried to say it was a punch in the mouth, but if it's down here, it's not there. Still there. Yeah, that was one heck of a mixture. So if you're ever wanting to try and you're mixing around, go find their sweet mash rye, all right? And this one just has the, this is their latest release, and it comes in at 113. Now the sweet mash rye is a shelfer, and sweet mash, when they talk about that, it means that what they do is they make a run and they clean everything done and they start all over. All right, and they do that all the time. So after every run, it's clean it up, move it out, and then they start all over. Clean it up, move it out, start it all over. That's sweet mash. Sour mash is when they take a little bit of what's in there called backset and they put it into the next mixture in order to have a level of consistency, so to speak, and we'll go with that. The Hard Truth has decided to go with sweet mash. Good on them. Alrighty, so if you would, like, subscribe, hit that stuff across the bottom so you get more notifications when they show up. You have the Amburana finish. For those of you guys that are turned off by Amburana, you will not be turned off by this. This has a very, very, very light. In fact, there's competing flavors between that, the sherry cask, and the actual bourbon itself. Very, very well done. In fact, maybe just an ice cube in it might turn it into something that you'll enjoy. Then we have the double oaked. I am not a double oak guy. I said that earlier. This one is not overdone. No, I'm not drinking an extra barrel stave. It has that marshmallowy toasted kind of thing, and that's pretty good. But it has a very, very strong finish if you like that. That is not my bag. However, when you put a little half and half with their sweet mash rye, which makes no sense whatsoever to me, you get something that is a totally different product than the other two. The nose on that thing was outstanding, and the palate was very, very good too. But again, it was still punchy, had two different kinds of flavors than either one of these would produce, and the flavor and the finish were just a little bit more muted than either one of the two would provide. So again, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, and as always, we want you to save the pars but share the pours.